Yeah. All right, cool. It's going. All right, so on there? Yeah. All right, so welcome back, everybody. For this episode, we'll be talking about chapter 12, which focuses on effective communication through conferences. And so this chapter looks a lot, looks a lot at the different types of conferences, feedback and goal setting, achievement invention, and what it takes to prepare for and conduct and follow up on each in a way that clearly communicates student learning. Joining me today are my colleagues in this endeavor. We got Melissa, Selena, and Andy. And we'll be each taking on different learning targets from the chapter to speak about these different types of conferences. To start us all off, I'll turn it over to Selena to get us with learning target one.
Okay, we're back. Again, this is a chapter I didn't too much care for either because I don't like conferences. Period. I just don't like them. but so my topic was select conference options, options best suited to your students' parent and parents' needs. And what this chapter basically said is that not all conferences should look the same. The type of conferences that we choose should match the purpose and the needs of both the students and their parents. So it talked about different conferences like feedback, goal setting, achievement, and intervention conferences, and each one serves a purpose. It made me think about how I currently communicate with parents. I actually only use one, and that's intervention. Um, but also it'll be I guess goal setting too, because we're required to sit in some IEP meetings. And if I have that particular student, it's all about goal setting with them. So like right now, most of my communication does happen with IEP meetings or phone calls. My intervention conferences are through phone calls. I'm a parent myself, with a lot to do. I work, I know other parents, so it's a lot to try to take time to come and meet. Why meet when we can just have a conversation? If we can have a conversation over the phone and get an understanding of what we're both needing from each other as teacher and parent, then I guess that's great. Um, so basically my phone calls are intervention, like I said. This is for when students are not completing work, not putting forth the effort, especially when I know they can, or is at risk for failing, around mid-quarter, mid-semesters. Those conversations, they're very important, but they usually fall more into, like I said, in an intervention type. So I'm not really calling to say, hey, how you doing? Let me tell you how your son's doing. This more like, hey, they need to get it together or they're not going to make it. And that's kind of required. So I really only do them because they're required from my principal, but I guess I should do them more often. Like, for example, I had a student who wasn't turning in assignments and, was close to failing. I reached out to the parent, during the conversation. We're able to talk through what was going on, get some expectations, and, come up with a plan. After that, the students started turning in work more consistently and improved their grades. And I also found the factor of we have a phone in our classroom. So I started calling, they thought I was playing. I started calling parents during class. And what got to the students is I'm on the phone. I step out the room with the phone. I'm on the phone, and parents say, let me speak to them. So I'm like, I call them over here. That literally lit a fire in them because they don't like that. And they think that you're what they say, capping. You're not going to call my parents. So, that was something that I did because I was just frustrated and over it, especially with that particular class last semester. But everybody got themselves together. And so that was good. Reading this chapter, I did realize I could balance more in how I communicate. It shouldn't just be with something that's wrong. I did talk about this. I would like to start calling parents when students are doing really well. Like I have a student that's just on the money, just to let them know, hey, because I would want I would want that phone call as a parent. Like, yeah, your student is like such a joy to have in class. I don't have no issues with them, especially when you have a group of kids that you do have issues with. But to have a child that's just refreshing and doing what you ask them to do, letting that parent know is a good thing because I would want to hear that. So I do want to try to start doing that. That was my goal this year. It didn't happen, but maybe next year since school's almost over. Um, Also, I think I can see how feedback conferences could be useful. with students working instead of waiting to the end. But I think I also kind of do that throughout the classroom, throughout the semester. It might be just general, but I let them know, hey, you need to get it together, feedback as it's going through. And I just ask them, have you checked your grade lately? You need to check your grade. And plus, I give them multiple opportunities as well to get caught up. Like I tell them, the only way you can fail my class is if you just don't do the work. And I give you plenty of time to do it. Unless I'm just frustrated and over it and y'all not taking advantage of the opportunities that I'm giving you. So, but overall, the chapter helped me see that choosing the right type of conference just depends on the purpose and making sure that, communicating with parents and students is consistent and not just reactive. So I want to get better at doing that. And with that, I'm gonna pass it on to Indy, I think, with the second one.
I got the fourth one.
Oh, my bad. Melissa. Sorry.
Here, it's okay. So I have learning target 2, which was prepare for, conduct, and debrief feedback and goal setting conferences. So this learning target is really about how basically like we communicate with the students through conferences, specifically focusing on that feedback, and Selena talked about it a little bit, to help the students set goals for improvement. Um, so one of the big ideas from this chapter was that conferences are meant to go deeper than just our grades. And so there's a way to actually like have that conversation about student learning and help students understand where they are and what they need to do next. So I broke this up a little bit into the little sections. So the first part is definitely preparing for the conference. So the chapter emphasizes that both the teacher and the student need to come prepared with a clear purpose, a focus on the specific learning targets, and actual evidence of student work. So, if it's not clear, it's a problem because you want it to be clear so that the conference can end up being a kind of like surface level, or sorry, I butchered that. If it is not clear, it becomes kind of a surface level and not very meaningful. But if everything is clear, it does help students create that goal setting that they can then use to make improvements. So then during the conference, especially in feedback conferences, the focus is identifying like what that student is doing well and what they need to still work on. So I liked that the chapter talked about having the student talk first and reflect on their own work before us as teachers jump in. And I feel like that does help the student build their confidence and interdependence, and get them a little bit more understanding of how they are doing without just us telling them. So Um, after that, you have your goal setting. So after student has talked, teachers talked, now it's time to what can we do to make this feedback useful? And so the student and us as the teachers work together to create a clear plan, like we're going to turn in our missing assignments or we're going to redo this project to make those improvements. And the goal does need to be specific and actionable so that the student knows exactly what they need to do and there's not any confusion there. And then finally, with the little debrief piece, it's about what happens after the conference. So the student reflects on their feedback, both that they gave and that we gave, and with our plan with between the teacher and the student, they're going to decide what actions they're actually going to take to improve their work. And the chapter points out that this is where the real learning happens because students are applying the feedback, they're not just hearing it. So basically, overall, the learning target is basically about making conferences intentional and student-centered. It's not just a quick check-in, it's the conferences the chapter is focusing on are like structured conversations that help students understand their progress and take the next steps in their life. So that is the preparation, conducting, and then the debrief of a feedback and goal setting conference. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Michael.
Right. So learning target three, prepare for, conduct, and debrief achievement conferences. So this, um, it's one of the four types of conferences that are talked about in the chapter. And achievement conferences are distinct because their purpose is to communicate a student level of achievement at that point in time, as well as to show growth over time. So in that sense, they connect directly back to the lovely chapter 11. But instead of, summarizing learning into a single grade, they expand their communication through conversation and evidence. One of the key ideas is that achievement conferences are supposed to be evidence-based. And so they're not just general conversations about how a student is doing, but they're actually grounded in actual work. So you want to have things like, assignments and assessments and portfolios and any other kind of artifacts that you can have to demonstrate the learning that's taking place. Um, the chapter emphasizes that preparation is really crucial for these conferences to be really meaningful. And so teachers need to be clear on the purpose of the conference, the learning targets being discussed, and the evidence that will be used. And the students, if they're being involved in this, also need to be prepared to share and explain their work. So without preparation, conferences can become really surface level. Again, as Melissa spoke to about the feedback and goal setting conference. For example, like just simply showing a folder of completed work without connecting it to the learning targets doesn't really communicate anything meaningful about achievement. Um, so during the conference itself, the focus is on making the learning really visible. So that means clearly communicating what the student knows, what they can do, how the work demonstrates their understanding, and then how their performance aligns with whatever your expectations are and whatever the standards are. And so this often involves discussing both strengths and areas for growth, but also grounded in evidence. Um, Another important component is the student involvement. And so students when students participate in achievement conferences, they take on a more active role in communicating their own learning. So instead of being just passive recipients of feedback where they kind of just sit back in their chair and just listen, it's more advantageous to have them explain their work, reflect on their progress, and make sense of all the work that they were doing. And that shift is really important because shifting that ownership of learning onto the student is what really makes them have meaning behind it. And when they can articulate what they know and how they know it, they're much more likely to engage in the learning process in a very meaningful way. That third piece is this debriefing, um, which is often overlooked, but it's really important. So after the conference, there should be some type of reflection or follow-up. This could involve identifying next steps, clarifying any misunderstandings and misconceptions, or thinking about how the information from the conference will inform future learning. So overall, achievement conferences take the idea of communicating achievement and extend it beyond a single grade. They provide a more complete, nuanced picture of student learning through structured, evidence-based conversation. So now that we've talked about achievement conferences and how they communicate student learning, the next step is to think about what happens when that learning isn't where it needs to be, which leads us into Indy, who's going to talk about learning target 4.
All right. Thank you, Michael. I'm gonna say I kind of feel like how I feel about this chapter is how Selena felt about chapter 11. I don't like conferences, point blank. I don't care what kind of conference it is. I don't like them. But we get to my part. All right. So I had learning target 4, which was focuses on preparing for conducting and debriefing intervention conferences. And honestly, this is one of those areas that I feel a little uncomfortable, like I said about. But it also is where we can make some of our biggest impacts. So intervention conferences are different from your typical check-ins or achievement conferences. These happen when something isn't working, whether it's behavior, work habits, or academic performance, and the strategies we've already tried in the classroom just haven't been enough. What stood out to me this chapter is that these conferences are meant to be solution oriented, not punitive. The goal isn't to point fingers, but to really understand what's going on and create a plan that actually supports the student moving forward. Before, sorry, as y'all have spoken on before me, before even having the conference, preparation is key. That means coming in with clear evidence like work samples, missing assignments, behavior logs, so that the conversation is grounded in facts, not feelings. I think that's especially important because it keeps things professional and it helps everyone stay focused on the student. When it comes to actually conducting the conference, I really appreciated the structure. You start by clearly stating the purpose. Then you share your concerns and the evidence, and then the important part is that you invite input, whether it's from the parent or the student. Their perspective matters. Sometimes they can give insight into things we just don't see in the classroom. I also like that the process emphasizes reflecting on what's already been tried. In my own classroom, I've had moments when I thought, okay, this strategy should have worked, but hearing a student's perspective can clearly shift how I approach things next. From there, it's about building a realistic plan, who's doing what supports are in place, and how we're going to track progress. And I think the follow up piece is just as important. Sending a summary and setting a timeline shows that you're serious about supporting the student and not just having a one time conversation. If I think about this in the context of my class, this could look like a student consistently not completing projects. Instead of just marking things missing, I could use an intervention conference to figure out if time management is the issue, lack of understanding, or something happening outside of school, and then build a plan from there. Overall, this learning target reminded me that intervention conferences are really about partnership and problem solving. They feel tough at the moment, but when done right, they can really help shift outcomes for students in a meaningful way. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Selena for our first critical thinking question.
Yes. So I got the reflection question of which ideas I find most convincing are useful and why. Well, like Andy, I don't really have time for conferences. I do what I have to do when it's mandatory. And I hope my principal never sees this podcast. But IEP because they're mandatory. So I think that what stood out, I mean, what's useful would be to have a clear purpose before going to any kind of conference, whether it be an IEP intervention or even, like I said, trying to do the ones just to say, hey, your child's doing great. You know, the chapter kind of gave examples that show how a conference can happen, but not really communicating anything meaningful. Then there's no clear focus that make me reflect on how sometimes conversation can feel like we're just going through the motions instead of actually helping the student. So it's kind of vital to have a purpose and not, I guess, be doing it because it's mandatory. It kind of connects directly to how I communicate with parents now. A lot of my calls are reactive, meaning I'm calling because there's an issue. While those are necessary, the chapters, kind of make me realize that I should be also more intentional about positive communication. And I've always taught before you give a negative to give a positive. But in some of these situations dealing with high school, there's no really a lot of positive. When they got me to the point that I'm calling your parents, I've given you every opportunity. And let's start off with that. Just to let you know, parent, your child has had ample time. They've had every opportunity. I just graded some stuff the other day. It's 30 days late. I'm very lenient. You know what I mean? Like, just get the work done. I just want you to do the work. So, no, you're not going to get full credit. You might get 50%. I actually take off however many points. However many days is late is how many points. So if you're 35 days late, you're the highest you can get is 65, and and it better be good quality, because if it wasn't good quality and you got a 90, I'm taking 35 points off of 90. But again, it's better than a zero. I tell them never have zeros. Something is better than a zero. So I try to also, when students are behind, let them know what to focus on. Hey, don't worry about the classwork. It's not giving you a lot of points. You need to get them projects done. Whatever I'm counting as a project or as a quiz, you need to have that work done because that's what's going to push it. So having a clear purpose, and I also let the parents know what they can do because I've had parents ask me, okay, well, what can they do to get their grade up? Because I've actually had parents reach out to me because they're looking at their students' grades, and of course the students gonna lie and say, oh, she hasn't put grades in, or she didn't grade it. Oh, I turned it in, and da 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 da. So, making sure you have a clear communication with them and a purpose when you're talking to them to let them know, hey, yes, this is it. Yeah, they can turn it in. They have the time, but let them know up front they're not going to get full credit for it or something like that. That's always helpful. So just be clear in the communication as well. Um, I've already had those one-on-one conversations with students in my class, but this chapter helped me see that these moments can be more structured and purposeful, especially when it comes to them reflecting and reflecting and setting goals. So overall, the chapter pushed me to think about being more intentional, not just how about I communicate, but when I communicate with both parents and students.
So I think that's on me for the second. No, no, it's not. I don't got a second one. I got a third one. I'm going back off.
All right, that would be me. Sorry. So I have the second reflection question, which is how does this chapter align with or challenge your own beliefs about teaching and learning? So, with a project-based class, this one actually aligns relatively well, um, in certain elements of my class. So essentially, like, I already give like students feedback, but for like really big projects, what I'll do is I sit down with each student, whether or not they need feedback or not, and I just say, I have them like submit like a draft kind of like for English, and then I sit down with each one and I'm like, okay, we pull up their work and we look at it and I'm like, okay, well, this could be better or this was done really well. And then we set up a plan of how they can improve it before they submit it for final grading. So that's kind of like how it aligns with my beliefs in the sense of like the classroom setting. Now when it comes to like the parents, it challenges my belief a little bit. So my school uses talking points. So I never really like verbally communicate with parents a lot. Um, we have to use the talking points app, and I have started trying to be better about also just sending like nice messages, but thinking about it, like it challenges my belief a little bit on the nice messages because I mean, I don't have any kids, but I feel like if I got a message from the teacher, my instant thought would be, what's my kid doing wrong? What do I need to do? Do I need to talk to them? Um, and also another thing is like my school wants us to email every parent once a week. And I just feel like even though I don't have any kids, I try to think to myself, okay, my school has 4 classes. If each teacher has to email every parent once a week, that's at least 4 messages that every parent is getting on top of like the general announcements of midterm coming up, this coming up, that coming up. And so I try to limit it um to mainly like if something is wrong or like, hey, this grade is this, or not always just necessarily negative, but times if I need to talk. So that's where it challenges my beliefs a little bit of like just sending that message, hey, Johnny's doing really good. He did great on this project. So that's where it challenges my belief when normally if Johnny did really good, that's what he's supposed to be doing. So that's that. But if Johnny didn't do so well, then it's like, hey, just want to let you know, Johnny can resubmit because blank 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 was not done properly. But that is my reflection. This one, it kind of challenged and aligned, so like I split that one up a little bit. But with that, I'm gonna pass that one on to the next reflection.
All right, thank you. I think this time is me. So I had the most confident strategy. Interestingly enough, I don't tend to have issues with feedback or having conversations with parents. I'm all about like, hey man, come on in, let's talk. You can come in and watch. I don't even care. So all this stuff is is pretty straight, and I think that does come with time. I don't know. I can't recall how it was in my first few years, but thinking about the fact I almost got like 20 years in the game, I'm like, I don't really care. You can come talk to me. You ain't gotta hurt nobody. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. So the strategy I started thinking about is really, the achievement conferences because it happens a lot within the math, whereas parents really come in to speak with me about how students are doing very frequently. And so, I've always emphasized in the classroom at least to have them students kind of show and explain their thinking. So the idea of having students bring work samples and use those to communicate about how they feel, I mean, that's an extension of that. I would tend to have kids, several years, I would actually have folders of work in my class from the students. And then when the conference happens, I pull that folder out and be like, bow, this what they're doing and or not doing. So you're gonna see what's happening. And then I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm gonna let you talk about what you've been doing, talking to the student. And I think that's really important. So when it comes to, whatever the content is, I'll have the student walk through the problem, explain the reasoning, um, and let the parent kind of decide, like, so do you think that shows understanding or not? Oftentimes the conversations are kind of led from a lack of understanding. And so they can hear it from their child speaking about the math. Um, and so I think those are really, 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 valuable. Um, Now, I think the chapter does a decent job of explaining how to formalize that kind of process to give structure to something that kind of exists for at least in my classroom. And so, you know, that's straight because I feel confident in anchoring conversations and learning targets and the math and because without the math the specifics in the math, the conversations can get really overgeneralized and really about like completion or correctness rather than how students are understanding things. And so like where I think this is powerful is when students are involved in the conference and everything like explaining the work, they're doing more than they're reporting, they're making sense of their learning. And that articulation is really a huge part of developing understanding in math. So for me, this feels less like a completely new practice and more like words to structure of something I already kind of value. Using student thinking as the center of conversation. I mean, that's what happens as just a general practice in the classroom anyway. Um, so I think the main shift is just making sure, I'm not even gonna say shift, just another, the focus, is just ensuring intentionality about preparation and making sure that all the evidence and learning targets are clearly aligned and being referenced and the conversation is on that as we're moving forward. But that's my reflection. I don't got an issue with conference. Parents can come talk to me. I'm cool. Um, they can't see. They straight me. You can't see me. Now, what I would say, there was a thing about like talking to the parents and the sandwich thing about giving a positive and then you might say something positive. Do the best you can to hit them up in the first week before the students had a chance to mess it up. Then it's like, all right, so such and such, they came to class every day on time. And that for some students, that might be a first where they came the first week of school, whatever it might be, and they came every day on time and they get a phone call was positive. So the first interaction I have with parents is not going to be something negative. The very first interaction is going to be something positive, and that's it. Then the next time I call, it's probably going to be something negative. But at the very least, they know I will inform them if something positive were to take place, and that happens in the first week, first 10 days or whatnot. And then you can do what you want to do as far as having conversation because you have some kind of rapport, a little bit of rapport kind of built with that parent. I think that's what I always tell beginning teachers, like reach out in the beginning before something gets bad. That way when something gets bad, you've spoken to them at least once. Um, it helps out for things later. But that's my little spiel, and I'll go ahead and shoot that thing over to Indy.
Thank you, Michael. I will say that my school did tell us that, like you said in the beginning, you always start with something good. So then when that time comes when they're being that little problem child, then you can come back to the family like, hey, I already reached out to you and told you all the good your child is doing, but right now we got to handle this. But yeah, I that's just something I got to work on myself. I'm antisocial. I will say that. I'm not even gonna lie. That's why I don't like doing conferences. If I know you, I'll socialize. If I don't know you, I don't really mess with you like that. But anyways, getting to mine. I had what part of this chapter makes you feel uncertain, nervous, or hesitant about applying in practice? So like I said, one part of this chapter that makes me feel a little uncertain or honestly a bit nervous is conducting intervention conferences, especially when it involves addressing sensitive issues with parents or students. I feel confident in building relationships and supporting my students, which I'm very well at, in the classroom, but having those more difficult conversations where I have to present concerns, backing evidence can feel a little intimidating because I'm not one of those confrontational people as well. I think that makes me a little hesitant. Tongue tied. Sorry. I think what makes me hesitant is the possibility of the conversation not being received well or unintentionally coming across as judgmental. Even when my intention is to support the student, it can be challenging to balance being honest with the student's struggles while also maintaining a positive and collaborative tone with the families. At the same time, I understand how important these conferences are. The chapter really emphasized being prepared with clear evidence and approaching the conversation as solution oriented, which does make me feel more confident. I think with practice, a lot of it, and by focusing on partnership rather than blame, I'll become more comfortable navigating these conversations in a way that truly supports my students. And that's all I had for mine. If anybody had anything to add, if not, I'll give it back to Michael.
Cool. If anybody got nothing else to talk about, so as we'll wrap it up. So as we wrap up chapter 12, then the key takeaways of conferences kind of give us some more complete way to communicate student learning, one that goes beyond what grades alone can show. And across different types of conferences, the common thread is clear purpose and strong alignment with the learning targets and use of evidence to make learning visible. And so as we close out this episode, this brings us to the very end of our podcast series. Across these chapters, we looked at how assessment moves from design to evidence communication, all with the goal of support student learning. And that's it. That's it. I don't know if anyone wants to have like bye takeaways or whatnot from the whole series, but this is episode finale.
Well, it's been fun. I'm glad he actually implemented this. I'm glad that the universe put this group together because I had so much fun with y'all. Like, I'm really gonna miss them. We're gonna have to keep doing this, like at least meeting up and see what's going on because this was actually really fun. Like, this was way different than any other course, so I enjoyed it. I hate that it's the last one. Like, dang, this kind of made it go by fast too. We really had a good group. Like, I was hesitant at first because, like Indy say, I don't talk to people, but
Yeah, I don't
I
talk people.
I think we all did good and we, came together. And Melissa, I was just thinking about this the last podcast, just from beginning
From
to
the beginning.
now. Like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you.
Thank
Like,
you.
yes.
Yeah. We had lots of
Yes,
growth
yes,
from
yes,
us.
yes, 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 yes. I was just thinking about this the last one we did. I was like, dang, starting from the beginning to now. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've taken something from each and every one of y'all that I'm gonna take back to my class. I appreciate y'all for real. Like, I'm gonna miss y'all. I think this has been the best class I've actually had thus far.
Same here.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed having the podcast with y'all as well.
Yeah, same here. Same here. It's different. It's definitely different than doing like, write a
Just
little
doing the
discussion
work.
board and then you don't even really read nobody else's thing. You don't reply to nobody.
You just be scanning. Y'all know
Just
y'all just
like,
be scanning.
yeah, pretty much. Who wrote something real small I can reply to and I ain't gotta really
Yeah.
read it. All right.
Yeah, exactly. If I'll tell you what, if we ever have to get another class and have another group, they got some high standards. I'm like, look here. Y'all gonna have to look together because my last group,
I didn't have this problem last semester.
exactly.
Facts.
There might be some
Big
beef
facts.
in those groups because I'm like,
Mhm.
look, y'all need to get it together.
Yeah, I know that's right. I know that's right.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
thanks, Professor. We appreciate it. Think this is a good idea. It's really
Oh
different.
yeah.
It's out the box, is what they would say in my
It
classroom. It's
is. It
something
is.
out the box. So that's
This
good. It's
is
not
out.
the same old mundane, day-to-day discussion, response, paper, quiz, test.
Mhm.
I can finally
Yeah.
say I actually understand assessment now.
That part.
There you go.
Like
That's what's up. Yeah,
I've
that's what's up.
literally taken stuff away from this class and to apply to my
Right.
classroom.
I'm like, oh, that
So
makes sense now.
yeah,
Mhm.
and then I actually then got called out through the
Mhm.
text and stuff like this. Like, dang, okay, let me get myself together. So
Right.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's what's up. That's good stuff. But yeah, I definitely appreciate old little bruh, Dr. Williams putting
look,
things together. He gonna watch it. And I'm gonna get well, but hey, he little brother to me. I got more years, but
I hope
uh
that he give us grades on effort and not like chapter 11.
yeah. Because I mean, we
Yeah,
put forth maximum effort. We ain't never had no issues. No, week to week,
right,
we never had no issues. So we
right,
good. We good on all that stuff
right.
and good content, good
Well, I
quality
hope they
content.
enjoyed our podcast too. You know,
Oh yeah, they can watch it.
yeah,
But yeah, that's what's up. Y'all go, review those things too. Go ahead and watch yourselves and big
yeah. I'm gonna
ups.
go.
Make your
I'm gonna
family
go
watch.
back. Yeah, I'm gonna go back and look at them. Look at some because I'm gonna be like, oh.
hmm But yeah,
It's
and
been
with
real,
that,
y'all. It's been fun. We are
oh yeah,
done.
big facts. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.
All right.